Superb. So, welcome, Kirsty, today. Before we get started, I'd love to do an intro for anyone that tunes in on YouTube or any of the other platforms, Spotify, etc., later on, just so they know the legend that they're going to be hearing from today. If that's all right, it's probably gonna make it a little bit awkward, but is that okay if I just start with a brief intro?
Go for it. I have no idea what you're going to say. Go for it.
No, no, so you can correct me because this is the research, not AI. This is the research that I've gathered together. So today I am absolutely delighted to introduce your good self, Kirsty Baggs-Morgan, the human resources revolutionary, daughter, sister, confidant to the many, certified spicy Wonder Woman, with a career spanning over 30 years in the heartbeat of organizations, HR, rising up the corporate ladder rather, to become chief people officer before branching off onto the road less traveled to start evolving HR, which I've come to know as the home of HR professionals wanting to bring the human back to the profession. Thank you so much for joining, and I cannot wait to get into it. Now, did I make anything up there that wasn't incorrect or inaccurate that you wanted
No, no,
to?
it was absolutely spot on. And I'm so delighted to be here today. Really, really happy to join you on this because we have some history, don't we?
We have some history, and actually, I don't think it was one of the things I meant to ask, but I'm trying to date how far back we go back, and I want to say it was in your earlier role at the National Australia Bank when I first probably came across you, which feels like
2005.
sounds about right.
Yeah, I think
2005.
yeah, you were a recruitment consultant back then, and I think I've worked with you first at
Yeah,
NAB, so that would have been 2005, 2006. Worked with you again when I was at Aviva, and worked with you again when I was at Coke.
yeah,
And so yeah, sort of 2005 to 2010-ish, I think
yeah,
we worked together fairly
yeah.
regularly. I always seemed to have a lot of recruitment back then. Um,
Yes, yeah. The things were booming up until this credit crunch situation that happened, and
yeah,
for my part, I didn't really have words for it then, but I always enjoyed catching up with you and working with you because it was, as it is now, just real conversation about trying to get the best result for the organizations that you represented with the best talent that I could possibly find you at the time. So yeah, to then end in around about 2010 and then find out through serendipity that you are evolving HR, and then come to your cozy one back in July was yeah, a special moment for me just to be reconnected after so long.
it was. I don't think there's ever been a clearer "it's a small world," considering
Mhm.
neither of us are doing what we were doing when
No,
we worked together 20 years ago. We're both doing completely different things. The fact that your
yeah.
name came back up again
Mhm.
and you were able to make that event because it was literally what, 4 days later when we connected, and I was like, "You're not around in 4 days, are you? I'm running this event in London." You said, "Actually, I am," and it was
Yeah,
like bang, 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 bang. It was meant to be, meant to
yeah,
be the whole
meant to be.
reconnection. Yeah,
Meant to be, and from my part, I think when I first reached out to you, I was thinking, oh, like we'll catch up, we'll get a coffee in London. Then I find out that you don't actually even live in the country anymore, so that was news to me as well. So there's been a lot of change over the sort of last 20 years or so, really.
very
A lot of,
much so. Yeah, yeah.
and for sure we'll get into many different angles, as many as we can possibly cram into this conversation. But I always love to just explore and test my insight, perception, intuition, with these things. And when I go back and look at, your profile and the journey that you've had, filling in the gaps of what I didn't know, I
Mm.
sense that you may have a thing, and I say a thing, for learning, because there are so many qualifications and accreditations and things that appear on your CV, which I don't always see. And so either you were forced to, under duress, to take things on, or there is something about challenging yourself, building your skills that comes through. So just wondered if you can stand me down and correct me, or walk us through your choices in terms of why you chose to do the sorts of studies that you did at the different
Mm.
points in time as a sort of breaker.
It's really funny, actually. I don't think. I realized that I had this need for continuous learning and development until I
Mm,
wasn't getting it. And this is with no disrespect to the role that I was in at Coke. I was there for 11 years. But there
mm,
does come a point in your HR career where you've done a lot of the stuff that you're doing is sort of annual cycles, that sort of thing. And at the point that I left Coke, I think that was where my learning really kicked off again, because I was like, I haven't done any studying since, oh, goodness knows when. I finished my CIPD in 2001. And so when I left Coke, I was like, I really want to test myself from a theoretical perspective again. So the first thing I did is I signed up to a strategic HR management program with Cornell University in the States, and I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. The thing I loved the most about it, it was really blooming hard.
mm.
And when you've been working in a field for 20 years, it's very easy to, would it have been 20 years at that point? Nearly 25. Very easy to think, oh, I know everything. And I didn't. And I loved that because there were assignments and it was difficult. And I needed that. I wanted something to get the old grey matter,
Yes.
going again. I needed to know, you don't know everything about this. You can't do it standing on your head. And so I loved the program. It was absolutely brilliant, but it just gave me that fix I needed of needing to learn new things and do new
Yeah.
things. And the profession had moved on so much since I did my CIPD. There was a big chunk of this program that was all about data analytics. Well, that didn't exist in 2001, not to the same extent that it does
No.
now.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just kind of kept going. So I then trained to be an executive coach. You and I both did Academy of Executive Coaching. I
Yeah,
now
I didn't
know, but
even
at
know.
different
Yeah.
times. Yeah. So I did my coaching qualification. That took about, I think it's about 6 months or so, isn't it? I
Yeah,
think
that's
that
right.
program. And then since then, I've done multiple different accreditations and different things. So I've done sort of a accredited practitioner in a resilience psychometric, and I bring resilience coaching into my coaching. I did a self-belief qualification, so all about coaching people around their self-doubt, their self-belief, that sort of
Mm.
thing. And I've just kind of kept going. But yeah, it turns out I do really love it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that the first question I asked, I didn't fall flat on my face in it.
No,
And
you were
it's,
bang on.
it's still working. And for me, what comes out loud and clear is the approach and the perspective you took to learning, because I often have this view that at some point in our lives there is this self-doubt or this imaginary audience thing that kicks in, which says, oh, you can't do that,
Hmm.
you're gonna be silly. But when we're babies and we learn to sort of crawl and then walk, stumbling as we go, we're grinning and we're just going through, and it's all an adventure in terms of increasing our mobility. But
Yeah.
what I love that you said was that you actually were looking forward to the challenge and not knowing something, and really testing yourself. And I just wondered, because a coach, as you know, we love this sort of reflective exercise, whether you can pinpoint where that comes from, because others would see it differently. Do you know what I mean? Others would be like, oh, well, I can't do that. I don't,
Mm.
let me stay comfortable. Let me not stretch myself. So any hints, tips, clues as to where that sort of
Well,
excitement came?
it's funny what you said about the self-doubt thing. So I was my role was made redundant at Coke.
Ah,
And it doesn't matter how many times you tell yourself that it was a business decision and how many times you absolutely understand why it happened. We merged with another group company, which left us with two heads of HR. We didn't need two heads of HR. I was a Brit living in America. The other one was an American citizen, didn't need a visa. It's kind of logical. So even though I understood why my role had been, sort of eradicated, it still leaves you with an enormous amount of self-doubt, and was it
mm,
me, and my confidence was shaken. And so I think there was an absolute conscious decision to, okay, now I need to do something. I need to build my knowledge back up again, or I need to build my confidence back up again, and
yeah,
maybe some of that will come through increased knowledge. So it was a deliberate thing. It was part of my kind of recovery from redundancy. um,
mm,
and it's something that we don't often think about. We don't, it can take you a really long time to build yourself back up after being let go from a job. And it's, like I said, even when the logical part of your brain knows why the decision was made, there's that little doubt in the other ear going, it's because of you. It was all because of you. And so you still have this kind of journey to go on to build yourself back up again. So that's 100% where it came from. And then I just carried on going because I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it makes me think about these sub personas that I've created. And I use this in my coaching practice of negative Nigel, no offense to anyone that's called Nigel, and negative Nancy, no offense to anyone that's called Nancy, or anything in between, you know, depending on how people feel they identify and sharpen the world. But that voice in your head is so powerful when it comes to creating that self-doubt, which I think maybe as baby we don't have language or something, so it's all goo goo gaga, so we don't heed it. We just we're off, falling off stuff, and then up we get and we go again. And I really I guess commend you for sitting with that, because knowing you as I did back then, you put your heart and soul into every job that you did. Probably definitely worked more hours than you were assigned and paid for. And so of understanding, and of course being through how many redundancies or, you know, situations like that on the other side, even though you knew all of that, it still sort of slaps you in the face like a sort of less than cool breeze on an awkward day. So
it does. I mean, and my situation was unfortunate because I was a US employee at the time, so there actually isn't any concept of redundancy in US law. So the meeting that I had, there was no consultation process because they don't do that. It was more like getting fired, quite honestly. You know, called into a room and then given a box and told to go clear my desk, just because that's how they do things over there. And so it's there's a humiliation element to it as well, that I had to walk through the trading floor with my box and leave without saying goodbye to people that I've worked with for over a decade. And that's, again, it's no criticism of the company. That's just how things are done over there. But there's an element of that is, you know, it's really upsetting. It's really hurtful. You know, and I say to people, I got fired because it felt like getting fired. You know, I know the reason behind it, but it felt like getting fired at the time. And so the negative voice was incredibly loud, and I don't think it ever goes. If I can, with my own coaching as well, and I'm sure you do too, if I can get people to a point where they can turn the volume down on it, or at least recognize it for what it is and go, not today. We're choosing not to listen to you today. Then, but it never goes. It never goes. It sort of sits there chirping at you, doesn't it? Like, why on earth would you think you're the one that should be doing this? Like, why? Who do you think you are? Kind of thing. It never goes away.
It doesn't. And I think this is why I love some of the stuff that you do, and we'll come on to it for sure, where I think you put the human back in the profession, because that moment where you're sort of faced with self-doubt and the perceived shame and humiliation of going through that, what could have been very different would have been had someone taken a human approach to how would Kirsty, or how is Kirsty going to feel about this as a corporate citizen of the highest caliber? How is she going to take this, and put their arm around you, physically or otherwise, just to say, hey, just so you know, here's the rationale, and we adore you, we love you, we highly value you, and you're going to land brilliantly. And if there's anything we can do, and I'm not saying none of this happened, but I think turning the volume up on that piece with real love and empathy would let you exit differently, without the collateral damage that we talk about, that we navigate and others have to navigate in these sorts of situations.
And it doesn't happen. It never happens. And I think there are a number of reasons for that. It's one of the things, when I was first trained, if you can call it trained, when I was first kind of talked through how to let someone go, one of the things that we were told was never apologize, never, you know, never physically touch anybody. Don't get too personal, just get it done and get them out as quick as possible, because invariably, when I was working for bigger investment banks, there would be 6, 7, 8 of these on the trot in the same day. You could just be like, get the message out there, get them out of the room. It's not a practice that is conducted with very much kindness. I always tried to be as empathetic and reasonable as possible with people, but where I got to do that the most would be in the consultation meetings beforehand, and then in the time that I spent talking to them after that meeting, You know, when we were talking through settlement agreements and how to get their stuff back and all of that sort of thing, I would try to be as kind and empathetic as possible. But in that actual meeting, let's be honest, anyone who's ever been on the receiving end of it is slightly shocked,
Yeah.
and they don't really hear very much past your job's being terminated.
Yeah. No.
So I
So
would
true.
kind of pick up the rest of it afterwards, if that made sense. I would get in touch with them the next day and then do
Yeah.
that. But I don't think there's a good way of doing it. There's lots of bad ways of doing it. I don't think there's a
Yeah.
good way of doing it, unfortunately. But
No. It's a
yeah,
challenge. It's a challenge. However, here we are.
yeah,
Turmoil often precedes transformation in my book these days when I look around. And I think I'd like to segue a bit into your career, because it blows my mind that we met almost 20 years ago now. And in that time, financial services definitely featured heavily in your earlier career.
hmm
How did it come to be that you found yourself in that space? Because there's so many sectors you could go into.
yeah.
Yeah, what happened there?
Um, was it a conscious choice? I was working for a telecoms consultancy, and I was an office manager, and I was helping out with some HR admin. And I knew after about 3 years that I needed to go to a company that actually had an HR department,
Right.
and applied for a number of different jobs through agencies. And the one that came up for me that I was successful in was Deutsche. It was Morgan
Mhm.
Grenfell Asset Management, but it was
Oh,
already owned by Deutsche Bank,
yeah.
became Deutsche Asset Management very quickly after I joined. And I spent 3 years there with them. And then once you've done financial services, that's where you get all the jobs that I was ever presented with. Every time I was ready to move on, were always financial services. All the
Mm,
recruiters that I knew were financial services. I kind of got used to it. There's a tendency in the recruitment world, which you may remember, of
yeah,
pigeonholing people in one industry because they've done that industry
makes sense.
before. And I
Makes sense.
very much felt like that was the only option open to me. I
Yeah.
didn't question it. I didn't disagree particularly until many years later. But yeah, went there as PA to the head of HR/HR admin in
Mhm.
1998. And by the time I left the industry, I was chief people officer.
Yes. Go on, girl. Go on. This is what I love. Go on. You can't hold talent down. You just cannot do that. And- But to help others that may be in the space or thinking about entering the financial services space or avoiding it, you never know. What were your takeaways from the time in financial services, if you could cast your mind back?
It is probably one of the most adrenaline fueled, exciting, never stopping industries out there.
Mm,
And that I always loved. I loved the fact that it was always a high stakes environment. I loved the amounts of money that was changing hands, not my
mm,
hands. I would have been a trader if I'd wanted to earn that kind of money. But it blew my mind, some of the compensation packages that I had to deal with over the years, and the way that we had to think about, you know, people's bonuses and people's compensation, things like that. I found that really, really interesting. It
mm,
it was ever changing. It never stopped. It was crazy fast paced. That's the plus side. It's also the downside.
mm.
It's chaotic. It's so fast that a lot of people just wouldn't stick at it as long as I did. It's, I don't know, is it getting better? I don't know. It was very much an old boys club when I started. I
Yeah.
was never on a leadership team until my very last role at Alpima and Zuvu, my very last two roles. There were other women on the leadership team, but they weren't financial services. One was a SaaS company and one was fintech. In my
Wow.
financial services career, I was always the only woman on the leadership team. So it was a very, very male dominated environment. And there is, how do we say this nicely? There is an arrogance
Mm,
and an inability to deal with stress and pressure
mhm.
in very highly pressurized jobs that leads to some pretty unorthodox and unkind behavior towards other members of staff, like the HR department, junior
Yeah.
people. So I'm always flippant about it. The way I always used to phrase it diplomatically was, I've worked with some interesting characters.
That's with that smile as well. With that smile.
Yeah, yeah. The smile gives away what I really mean. So, you know,
Yeah.
some of that I wouldn't want to go back and do again.
No. No. Oh, did
Work
you?
with
But
some real divas and some really, really lovely individuals as well.
Yeah.
So it's like not every trader is a diva at all, but the ones that are, it's like that old rhyme with the girl with the curl in the mid. When she's good, she's very, very good. When she's bad, she's horrid. There was
Yeah.
like no in between.
No, it's you know, I spent so long in the sector as well as you do, and I recently talked about how the crucial pillars of any organization are the culture and the people, and they kind of link in a really beautiful way. And sometimes the culture is what you let the people get away with or what you celebrate. And I think back then, the view of HR was very much a facilitation station versus what I'm seeing with some, not all organizations now, where it is seen as a key partner to the evolution of what an organization can be. Because without people, unless you're just a tech thing with just one person doing computer work, without the people, you cannot go forward. And so I do see a real transition and change in terms of what's expected of HR leadership, but also the seats that their fellow colleagues of ours are invited to occupy, which is welcome, and it is good. And not everywhere is the same, like you said, but we definitely got to see a spectrum of behaviors
Oh yes,
in that time.
there's a book in me somewhere.
Yeah, there could be a book in here. Yeah, there could be a book in here, but you tell me more about that. But knowing you to be a certified lover of spice, and my shared view that is the variety of life, I'm not entirely surprised that you left financial services, given what we talked about now, and the frenetic pace and some of the sort of cultures that you kind of passed through, whether it be divisionally or teams or what have you. But what was it like branching out into other sectors? Because you said earlier, like you kind of become typecast the longer you stay somewhere. So sort of leaving the security and the knowledge and just the general acceptance of you're one of us because you're born and raised financial services, to going into other sectors. Can you talk a bit about that transition?
Again, totally deliberate. So like I said, I was let go from my role at Coke living in America. My husband had taken early retirement at this point, and it suddenly dawned on us. So we had 60 days to get out of America and be back in the UK. The company repatriated us. The process wasn't too horrendous, but we suddenly had this moment where we were like, we could go and live anywhere because you're retired. I haven't got a job right now. We could go and live anywhere. And I remember saying to my husband, if we go back to London, which is where we had moved from, I'm going to be put straight back into another HR role in an investment bank, and I need to do something different. I don't want to go straight back into it again. So we moved to Bath.
Oh, wow.
Because it's beautiful. And we thought, why not? We can move to Bath. So we moved to Bath, and I got a job with a company called People Puzzles, who basically you stay self-employed and they go find your clients for you, and you do fractional HRD work. And I thought this will be a really good opportunity to try some different industries. And I did that for just over a year. And I worked for an engineering company, a manufacturing company, a law firm, a charity, you name it, a company that made glue, a company that serviced and made hospital beds, the ones that go up and down. So they looked after all the hydraulics and things like that. And it was anywhere, Bristol, Bath, and I had one client down in Devon. And so it was really interesting to me to see that you have exactly the same problems in terms of leadership, exactly the same people problems, exactly the same problems in how we're going to determine what our strategy is as a business for the next few years. It didn't matter whether it was 30 people, 30,000 people, financial services, or a glue company in Bristol, same issues, which had always been my theory, but it was the recruitment consultant saying, no, you can only do this. So I did it deliberately because I wanted to get a real feel for some different industries. And that really opened things up so that when I went back to look for a permanent role again, and I went to Zuvu, they liked the fact that I'd worked in different industries and not financial services. So it served my purpose very well. So
that is brilliant. That is brilliant.
Yeah, loved it.
And I like the intentionality around, let me not just knowing you that you're not going to do the same thing over and over again, but let me not just fall back into the environment that would offer me what I've done, because you would have been snapped up on return because you've got the international experience now, you've got a solid record and a wonderful reputation. So That's fantastic. And the fact that, you know, for people hearing this who want to pivot and change and do other things, just to know that where you start doesn't have to be where you end is a gem. So thank you for sharing that, because you're on job, you're doing the thing and inspiring with your journey. So being curious, aka nosy, I wondered what the call was to leave the corporate climbing frame, if you will, when you were like literally at the top, like CPO, chief people officer, head of people. There is nowhere else in the profession that you go above and beyond that. You know, you could do some non-executive work, but in terms of on that corporate ladder, you're top head honcho. So to leave that and the security and the salary and the status of all of that, like, what happened? And I'd love to just delve a bit into that with you.
Again, as part of my recovery from being let go, one of the first things I did for myself was a personal values exercise, which I'd never done before, ever. Hadn't stopped to think for 1 second how I wanted to show up in the world, what was important to me, what were my non-negotiables. I knew that I wasn't working in a way that aligned with my values in some of the organizations I've worked with over the years. I did that, but I know that now. At the time, things just felt a bit icky. They felt a bit off. And I didn't have the words then to articulate it's because it's not aligned with your values and who you are. I now know that. So a combination of that and loving the coaching that I was doing. So I was always doing the coaching from when I was qualified. I carried on coaching alongside my HR roles, but just, you know, a couple of clients here and there. But I made a decision very early on that I was only going to coach fellow HR professionals. So then I kind of got this real passion for wanting to make HR more manageable, easier to navigate, more enjoyable, and make people more successful by providing a service that didn't exist when I was in my own HR career. So there were barely any HR coaches out there until 5 years ago. Most of the HR coaches that I know now have started doing it since COVID, with 1 or 2 exceptions that have been doing it longer, but not many. And then I kind of got this real bee in my bonnet around, when we talk about HR, we're only ever talking about the work. We're not talking about the people doing the work. And I just felt that HR professionals were completely overlooked in favor of their function. I mean, I joke about this on LinkedIn. If I had £1 for every time someone had introduced me to their partner or friend as HR rather than Kirsty, I probably could have retired at 40. Like, we get confused with the function that we're part of. It's crazy. I don't see that. Nobody goes and says, hi, this is finance. Nobody does that, but they go, this is HR. At a wedding, I was introduced as HR once to somebody because the person introducing me happened to be in my organization. I got on with my soapbox about, I want to help other HR professionals. I want to make life in HR easier than it was for me. So how can I do that? What can I provide them with? And it is coaching and it's development. And so one of the big things I do now is I've developed this program called SPICE, and that's an acronym, and it's the 5 elements that I see getting in HR professionals way the most, that holds them back from really making an impact in their jobs, from really being strategic in their organizations. And it's strategy, perception, impact, commerciality, and empowerment. And by empowerment, I mean that's all the personal stuff. That's the confidence, the imposter syndrome, how we hold ourselves back. But the other 4 are the biggest obstacles that I've come across. Like, you're not commercial enough, you're not strategic enough. We all think you should be there. That's just the perception. You're there to organize a Christmas party. Get back in your box. Stop talking about business strategy. And then the impact that we have. So I've developed this whole program around it. I think about 150 people have gone through that program now. One of the reasons that I use the chili pepper in my LinkedIn logo is because my program is called Spice. But it's also because I got diagnosed with ADHD at 50, so I have a spicy brain as well. So it's like a double spice thing.
This is impact, if ever I've heard it, and just how things fall into place sometimes. You know, I now believe life has to be lived forward, but it can only ever be understood backwards. Like, literally, you go somewhere and you get there and you're like, how did I get here? And then you look back and it's like, oh. And that, you know, when you talk about the ick and just something being off. That for me speaks to your intuition and your alignment being off. The internal radar is beeping, but you can't contextualize it. You haven't got the words for it, but there's something that's not there. And to think that, we go through life not really focusing in on that sometimes. And then it's only in reverse when you look back, you're like, oh Lord, every time I've had that ick, it really hasn't worked out for me. But
100%, 100%. It's like the jobs that you took, even though you kind of knew when you took it that it wasn't right, they're never right. You're never wrong about that. You are never wrong about that. But from a values perspective now, what I identified as my absolute core values, the first is authenticity. The second, so I will only be myself now, and I will only show up, as I am. And I always joke about the tattoos. They're the most visible, I think, indication of me being myself, because I covered them up for so many years. But other than that, it was independence for myself. I don't want to feel tied to anything or anyone from a work perspective. I want to do work that gives me freedom and that enables me to help other people have freedom. And then my third one is inclusion, because, for me, we use that expression, othered. I've been othered my whole life for being female. I've been othered for being ADHD, and I've been othered for being perimenopausal / moody, hormonal, whatever it is people want to say. You might have experienced othering for different reasons. So one of the big things that I have with everything I do now is that I want everybody to feel included, but I do particularly focus on those who have been marginalized, left out, othered, or forgotten at various points. So when you came to my event, I said to you, it's like the most wonderful group of misfits, the misguided, the marginalized. These are the people that I want to give a platform to, because they have absolutely as much to add in terms of value. And so that's really important to me.
No, do you know what? Like, beyond words, I felt it, because I think it was from the because I didn't know. So my mind, when we reconnected, was like, okay, Kofi of old and Kirsty of old, like, what do I wear? Was my first question. You were like,
it was. You messaged me.
Yeah, you're like, I think you don't know me that well, because there is absolutely no dress code. And I was like, okay, this is a start. So there I was in my biker gear and rolling up, and the minute I came in, it was just, I wrote about it recently on LinkedIn. There was something in the air where it wasn't performative, but it was just real and warm, and people felt comfortable. So you actually have done it. It's like Ron Seal, it does what it says on the tin. You have actually done it, because in the moments that I was there and I actually did not want to leave, I really felt I could be myself, because such was the empowerment towards authenticity through the stories. I know the Texas 4 did your thing, and I honestly couldn't stop laughing at so many of those things. But I took things away from one of them was around boundaries and setting those out before you all went away, and how that turned into a real strong friendship, because everyone knew what each other needed. But then the storytellers that spoke, from Sam Garson to Amy to Joshua, like my mind was just blown in poignant kind of reflection, but also celebration of, yes, like, you multi-talented, spicy, wonderful individuals, you're absolutely bringing it and doing your thing and are comfortable in your skin. And I want this, I want in. So yeah, shameless plug, we're doing it again, or I'm coming. If you can have me, I'm there. I've already booked my hair and nails have been done. I'll be in Bristol November 20th of November.
20th of November, the Bristol Harbour Hotel. And my goodness, we have some cool stuff planned this year. So we have our keynote speaker is talking about music for mental health, success, and well-being. And he's a pianist by trade, but he also plays in a heavy metal band. So he will be bringing both of his different types of music to the speech that he does, which will be really cool. But it's, music's one of those things that is unbelievably evocative. Like, a song can come on the radio and it can take you back 20, 30 years, and there's not much. Smell is probably the other one that does that. It's really evocative. But music, so he's going to be talking about the role that music plays in well-being and that sort of thing. We've got someone she specializes in bringing the power out of introverts. So she's going to be talking about the strategic power of introversion, because let's be honest, it's the extroverts that get all the attention, they get all the airtime. So she's specifically talking about introversion. We have somebody else who is going to be, this one seems a bit dark, but I know that she'll do it in a non-dark way. She's drawing a comparison between domestic abuse and toxic relationships in the workplace, which I think
I see this.
You don't leave, you stay, you put up with it, you don't know how to get out of it, and it gets worse and worse, and you're still there. And so she, as somebody who, she says, has experienced both, she wants to draw comparisons. So I think that's going to be a really powerful talk. And I'm actually going to be standing up and speaking at my own event, which I don't often do, but I've been testing the water and sort of campaigning a little bit around physical violence against HR professionals recently. I don't know if you saw some of my posts on LinkedIn. I have plans between now and November for really digging into that some more, and I'm going to stand up and talk about that in November. So we have a real mix of professional and self-development type topics alongside stories of that people that have overcome things or have learned from a big mistake or something. So we're sponsoring 6 unheard voices this year. So we're giving a 5-minute platform to 6 mostly HR professionals who have either overcome something huge or have a really big point that they want to make, and we're giving them a platform to speak, so because they wouldn't normally get one. So that's going to be pretty cool.
I love that. I tell you, people's champion, if ever I saw one in this, and I think something came to my mind as you were talking about all of these things, is the experiences that you've had, the empathy that you bring to the game of evolving HR. I feel part of that is because you can feel people. I feel like you really exude that tactile, spiritual spiciness where the echoes of others can be felt, because you've been othered, like you said, and it doesn't matter if our othering is the same or their othering is the same. Like the people that spoke at the Cozy one, everyone had a different story. It was unique, and but the journey that they've gone on to find who they were and find their voices and own their rightful place as a valuable 1 in 8 billion person, it was just like, wow, so I can't. Now, are there still tickets? Because
there are, yes.
So we'll have to include a link to that. And who's it for in terms of who are I know target audience sounds a bit corporate and a bit meow, but who would benefit from coming along?
Well, it's primarily targeted towards HR or HR adjacent professionals. So you don't have to work in HR. You could be a leader of multiple people. Anybody who works with people would find it interesting. So we don't have specific HR topics particularly. A lot of it is around, it's more generalized than that. But we had a lot of HR consultants. We had in the one in Manchester last year, there were quite a few recruiters. We have independent business owners, lots of coaches, things like that. But it's it's called Evolving HR. But Joe Bailey comes every year, and she's a former FD. So, but she said she gets as much from it as the HR folk do. So it's not restrictive, because that would go against everything I stand for. Basically, anyone's welcome. So. Yeah,
it makes sense. I mean, if culture and people, as I said, are the cornerstones of any organization. So if you are involved, and that could be as a chief operating officer, chief of staff, it could be anyone really, anyone that leads, who wants to sort of dial in. So yeah, I cannot wait. As I said, hair and nails have been booked. I will be there, and can't wait to clear my brain and hear the stories. But
if you don't show up with beard glitter, I'll be very disappointed, because it's like getting almost on for the Christmas season.
So is that a special request for glitter in the beard?
No, don't do beard glitter unless you want to. I told you there was someone that showed up as Buddy the Elf last year, didn't I?
Yeah, but see, the thing for me is that glitter does actually work, because I like to think that my spiritual animal would be a unicorn, and they do glitter.
If you want to come as a unicorn, Kofi, then I will get a photographer waiting for you by the door.
This 4 legs, perhaps.
Oh my goodness.
We see this, I knew this was going to happen. Now I'm going off. I need to bring my brain back into the room and ask you some actual sensible questions. And
Okay, I'm
something that
ready.
I flew past that you mentioned earlier on, which was at 50, you found out or you were diagnosed with ADHD. And I
Hmm.
don't think your 50th was that long ago.
2 years
So
ago. I'm 52 now.
what the heck and how did this come about? Because I just feel like that is it's a late one, but also
Yes.
makes for a very interesting story because who you have been and thought, do you know what I mean? Like I'd love to unpack that a bit because
Mm.
yeah.
It never even entered my head. There were always things that I knew that I did that other people didn't, that I just assumed were my quirks. Like my whole life, I've been told off for talking too much.
Mm,
Like move to the front in class. I've been always was criticized in school reports for being distracted. I've always been absolutely atrocious with money. Have absolutely zero emotional regulation. Like you can read me like a book, which isn't great
mm,
when you're interviewing a really bad candidate. But there's all these little things that I just thought that was just me. Also,
mm,
total inability to tell a story in a linear fashion. Like, my stories do not go A to B. They look like a plate of spaghetti. The way I tell a story, it's painful. Anyway, my best friend, who is quite a little bit younger than me, she's 38 now, she went through the diagnosis process. And I said, what on earth do you mean you think you've got ADHD? Isn't that like boys running around in school, climbing up the walls, getting on
yeah,
everyone's nerves? And
yeah,
she said, well, it's really interesting. That's what everyone thinks ADHD is. But no, it actually shows up quite differently in women, but it hasn't ever been researched particularly. So most women don't know. And she got her diagnosis. She started talking to me about what were her symptoms of ADHD. And I was just going tick, 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 tick in my head. And I looked at her and I said, do you think that? And she went, oh yeah, gosh, oh yeah, you definitely do. And I was like, oh, okay.
yeah,
So I went through my own diagnosis process, which takes a long time. I
mm,
mean, the NHS waiting list now is about 6, 7 years, depending on where you live. But I did go privately, got my
mm,
diagnosis. And it's funny, about 3 months ago, I had a phone call with a school friend that I hadn't spoken to for a few years. And we had a Zoom call, and I said to her, "Oh, I tell you what, I got an ADHD diagnosis recently." And she just looked at me and she went, "Of course you did." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she went, "Well, now, like, it all makes sense." And I've known her since I was 11.
oh
And
my
there
word,
aren't many friends that I'm still friendly with that I've known that long. And
sure,
people like my husband and my family, they've known me the whole way through. And
right,
so my husband doesn't, he doesn't really think about it. But it was her saying, "Oh my gosh, of course you have," that really made
mm,
me think, yeah, it was always there, wasn't it? So there's an element of it that is quite saddening to have gone through 50 years and not know that actually there's nothing wrong with you, Kirst. Your brain's just wired a bit differently to the
mm,
majority of people. But it's given me an awful lot of freedom in terms of understanding how my brain works.
yeah,
I've actually, because I can't help myself, I actually founded a community for HR professionals with ADHD. It's called ADHRD.
yes,
I'm really proud of that. And I think you met a good old chunk of them at the Cozy One the other week.
yeah,
That's my little spicy gang. And there's about 50 of us in total. There were about 12 there, I think, at the Cozy One. And I founded that community because I needed it. And
mm,
we do things like we do body doubling 3 or 4 times a week, which is where you just get online and work on Zoom with somebody, but it's accountability. So it's like having online colleagues, but it holds you accountable. And I've had people come in and run little webinars and workshops for us as well on topics that we're not necessarily that great at. But I think the understanding that it's given me, but it's become much, much more apparent to me since I've gone out on my own. Because I think when you're an employee, there's like a guardrail of accountability and you report
yes,
to somebody. Take those away, and my ADHD can just let its hair down, and boy, hasn't it just. So it's it's a fight that I have every single day, and
yeah,
it isn't easy. Like I was saying to my husband and I this morning, we were going through my business finances, and he was asking me to write out everything that I spent when I was over in the UK last month, and he's like, "So what did you actually make on that event that you ran?" I was like, "Nothing." Nothing, not a penny. And he said, but you made all of this in ticket sales. I went, yeah, but then I bought them all pizza and wine and goodie bags. And so I spent all the money from tickets on making sure everyone had a nice time. And he's just like, okay,
Oh my
okay.
God. Yeah, Robert
Yeah.
is said thinking, wow. Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't always have much common sense, but everybody had a nice time. So yeah, it's there are challenges,
There are. There
and I'm
are.
still
And
learning things about it all the time that I
yeah,
didn't know. Oh, that's an ADHD thing. That is too.
yeah. I just really, really, really respect and admire the way that you've approached it, which is, in true Kirsty fashion, there is no hint of a victim or worries of you. It's like Carl Jung said, I think it's like until you make the subconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll just call it fate or what have you. And in your case, you're aware of it, but it is not, I'm not hearing it define you, but it's just giving you that understanding. But then on top of that understanding for you, in true Kirsty fashion, again, you've built a community so that you can support other people. And I think I said it, did I say it? I'll check my notes. I'm pretty sure that I said it at the beginning that you're confidant to the many.
You
And
did. You did.
and I get it now because I think you embody the, yeah, look, I'm spicy and I'm different in so many ways. And here I am in all my uniqueness and spicy gothness. And you're welcome here too. And I think when you meet people on a, maybe too woo for some, on a spiritual level, irrespective of the exoskeleton situation, it's a deeper connection. It's not like, oh, okay, we like the same football team. Should we be friends and go for a beer? It's just different. It's different. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not surprised that you're taking it on, and I'm loving your learning. I can't wait to just keep following your stories. Like now that I'm back in touch on
Oh,
LinkedIn,
thank you.
and
It's,
if
yeah.
you can't take it with you anyway. So don't tell your husband I said this, but it's like there is value in things beyond money, and I think you're doing that stuff. Don't tell him I said because he'll come and look for me.
Yeah.
So I'm paying the bills with no money.
He'll just mention the bills. He always mentions the
Yeah.
bills. Well, I did. You see, I went and got a tattoo while I was over as well, and that was like nearly $1,000. And he was like, "Right, so you also spent £1,000 on ink?" I was like, "Mm-hmm."
Yeah, yeah.
So did you not think that maybe that could have waited? Well, yeah, but no.
It's that impulse control when it feels right.
Mm-hmm.
And did you know what, Kirsty? Like it was a good friend of mine's birthday today, and I rang him. I made sure I was the first one of our friends to ring him, just so he knew that I'm thinking of him. And I said, I just want to check you made it today. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, do you know 150,000 people every day globally do not wake up? They thought they would, but they don't. And
Is it that many?
it is. That's like the size of Cambridge or something of that nature, like
That's
globally.
terrifying.
And so when you get some ink or you spend all the money on feeding 400 people instead of 40 with pizza and accompanying beverages, I do think that what you leave behind way down the line, not tomorrow, way down the line when your lights go out for the final time, is experiences and emotions and memories and this spiritual sprinkling of good vibes.
I like that.
Money can't really give you. So do the thing, like do you do the thing.
So you mentioned earlier on, you said about turning my back on the chief people officer thing because I had the money, I had the status.
Yeah.
That was the only time that my ADHD wasn't a problem with money because I actually had it. So it
Yeah.
could keep up with my spending. So yes, I have a very different income level nowadays than I used to when I worked in financial services, but I wasn't happy. And like you said, I get a completely different type of fulfillment out of the work that I do now. It's not important to me anymore. I had that for 5 or 6 years, maybe longer. I had absolutely no financial concerns whatsoever, and it was great, don't get me wrong. But I'm much, much happier doing what I do now with a vastly simplified lifestyle, apart from the times that I think I can still just go and spend £1,000 on a tattoo when I actually can't. I wouldn't swap it for the world. And I never thought I'd be that person because I was so money motivated for my 20s and 30s. I think a lot of us are. I think a lot of us are. And then you just get to a point where you're like, now what? And I
Yeah.
was never like, you know, trader wealthy, but I had enough to pay all my bills. I had savings. I could go on holidays. I could buy designer handbags. I could do the things I wanted to do. But none of those things are important to me now. I don't even carry a blooming handbag now. I'll be a free tote bag that I've got at a conference and
Yeah.
all my pockets. That's it. Yeah. I've changed a lot in the last since I was let go actually, end of 2018. I've changed completely and I'm much, much more authentically me now than
Yeah.
trying to squeeze myself into it's the whole square peg round no square peg round hole. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
me. I
No,
was a
you got it.
square
You got it.
peg.
Yeah, you got
I
it.
was
And
a square peg.
I think that is such a beautiful thing. And look, it's not going to be everyone's thing. Obviously, we're
Oh God, no.
individuals, and you embrace that, and you're inclusive, and everyone belongs. But there is something to be said about coming to realize what works for you, and I think you really
Mhm.
have. And yeah, I can definitely um, sympathize with that view. You know, having worked in financial services, similarly, I think in the last year I've just sold so many things because I'm looking at them and like, dude, I don't need this. Someone could use it, and it's just sitting
Mhm.
here as an artifact of some past wealth that I had. Do like let it be useful to someone because I'm not taking it with me wherever I'm going,
Yeah.
right? So, that's brilliant. And look, I love this because it's just as I thought it could be organic, spiraling, going left, going right, up, down, multi-dimensional. There is an element of me that wanted to bring us to some thoughts around, you know, helping other people navigate more than you already have done, because I think you really have opened the lid on what it is to be you, accept yourself, and to grow. I thought about the pivoting to start, I guess, evolving HR, you know,
Mm.
and just like consulting and doing the gig thing, that's great, but like when you put your name or a brand out there, like your baby, and say, ta-da, here it is, having done it, there are some thoughts that may go through one's mind. And so I just wanted to get into like that voice that became loud enough for you to say, okay, well, this is what I'm now going to do. Like,
Mm.
where did that come from, and how did you get the ball rolling, as it were, you know?
The idea for evolving came out of my HR WhatsApp group, which has existed since I worked in HR. It's got nothing to do with my business. But I had started adding coaching clients to it and people that I'd meet at events and things. So there's about 70, 80 people in there. And
Mm,
I've noticed that nearly every post in that group just started with, does anyone know someone who can do X, Y, Z? Because
mm,
we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel in HR. We don't want to have to Google leadership development provider or I want a new job, who's a good HR recruiter. We don't want to have to do, if we can get a recommendation from somebody we trust,
mm-hmm.
that makes our lives easier. So I thought, I literally had a dream. The husband can back me up on this because I woke up the next morning. I was like, I had this dream that I think might be a good business idea. And he was like, oh God, is this another ADHD thing? And I thought, I'm going to create a directory of people that provide support, development, or community for HR professionals. And so I sent an email out that day, the day after the drink, to about 30 people that I knew and said, would you be up for going into this directory? And then we, make it available to people and say, here are a load of people that support HR in different ways. And every single one of them said yes. And so I thought, okay, we'll do it. So me and my VA created it as a PDF document. And we launched in February 2024,
Mm.
and we had over 1,000 people download that darn thing within 6 weeks.
Oh my God.
And that was what told me that people needed this and wanted this. So that's where it started. So originally it was a directory. And then from the directory, it became an app it's got all the directory pages are now on the app. Then it became, let's do a series of webinars and we'll get the providers that are in the directory. They can be the expert panelists on subjects that they're really good at talking about. We'll do we've done 26 webinars in the first year. And then we did a conference in November last year, which we sold out. And we recently, because people were asking me also, like the app's great as a resource, like I can go and look at what events there are, I can go and look at people's directory pages, but can't interact with anybody. So
Mm.
I created a community it's a platform called Heartbeat,
Yes.
created a community in June and just said to people, look, if you want more than just a resource looking at the app, if you want to actually engage with other HR professionals, here's where you go. And we've got just under 250 in there in the first 2 months. So
That is wild. Soon to be 251 because I'm part way there. I'm almost there at the final bit to get signed up, and I got an email.
Everybody keeps starting it and then not finishing it. I can see that there's over 100 people have started the sign up process and then gone, oh, I've got to answer questions or put a picture in. I can't be bothered. They're all optional. You can put a dash if you want for those.
No, I want to do it. I just okay. I wanted to do it justice, and I hadn't been out there having fun doing wild stuff. So I will this week make time because I want to be part of it. As I said, from meeting my new extended family, I just definitely want to be staying in touch there. So I'll definitely do that. And
please do. It's lovely.
Just the way that it evolved and flowed, it just speaks to me about just like letting your intuition take you to places and then testing it really. Like, is there value? Is it useful to people in some way, shape, or form? Because I think when it is, then it grows its own legs and runs off as this
totally does.
Like, that's so
totally does. And I've made it so that it's entirely free for HR professionals, all of it. Apart from the conference, obviously conferences cost a fortune to put on, so we have to charge for tickets for that. But the webinars are all free. The community is free to join and participate in. We did podcast episodes where we interviewed each of the speakers from the conference last year and then spliced in their audio of their talk. So you can listen to all of the talks from last year. They're all on the podcast episodes. They're all free to access. Everything's free to access. The way I actually have made it a business is the provider companies who participate, they pay me an annual membership fee to have access to that HR community. And to be able to be on the webinars and that sort of thing. So, but I don't charge them a fortune because it just doesn't feel right to me to do that. So
no, and also we've already covered that money making is not really your primary motivator these days, much to your husband's.
No, it's not, but I do need to. I need to stop giving quite so much away for free, like everything.
It's great, and I know that people would want to support it. So maybe not thinking of it as making money, but more that people do want to support you and give you the flowers that you deserve. And actually, controversial, I think you deserve them. I think you should take them. So yeah. If I brought you chocolates, you wouldn't give them back to me. You'd take them.
And very true. I would take them. I would absolutely take them. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'd actually demand chocolates from people. I feel more comfortable demanding chocolate than I would cash. Isn't that weird?
We love a reframe. Let's reframe this as
just buy me chocolate. Yeah. Even though I'm vegan, I can't blooming eat chocolate.
Fight some vegan. Yeah, we'll fight some vegan. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, just keeping it going with what we've covered so far. And I was just wondering about some of the obstacles that may have come up or may not have come up, but if there were any obstacles as you transition from salary to self-sufficiency and growing this marvelous community and everything else it stands for that might help someone else. I just wondered if there were any that came to mind that you could share.
The biggest one is your own self-doubt. I think everybody will encounter that. And then all you can do is learn how to deal with it, whether you listen to it or not, whether you're going to take it seriously. So that's the biggest one. The other biggest obstacle is it takes a long while to accept some of the financial elements. So not every penny of revenue that you make is yours. When you're salaried, you get your net salary and all of the stuff's been taken care of, like tax and NI. But when you get paid as a consultant or a coach or a business owner, you really only get to keep about half of it. Especially if you've got corporation tax and VAT and stuff, you get to keep about half of what you make. It took me a long time to stop spending the other half, basically, to get the hang of that. And also not knowing from month to month whether this is going to be a 10 grand month or £100 month. You just, unless you've got clients on a retained basis and they're paying you a monthly fee, you have no idea what each month's going to look like. And that is a massive adjustment from being salaried and knowing to the penny what's coming into your account every month to yes, I've had months where I'm like, am I going to be able to pay all my direct debits? And I've had months where I'm like, oh, that's 3 months worth of direct debits in one go. And it really can be that extreme. It really can be that extreme.
And just in terms of navigating that, because I hear you and others that have come on to this conversation platform have said similar but how have you managed to get your head around that?
Really badly because of ADHD.
Nothing but the truth. I love it. Yeah.
I mean, I'll be completely honest because I don't know any other way. Last year I was staggered that my business had made a profit. So when I was told that I owed several thousand in corporation tax, I hadn't set anything aside because I didn't think I was going to make a profit. And so I had to set up a payment plan with HMRC, which is no biggie, it's fine. But when they said to me, why is it that you need a payment plan? I said, because I didn't put any money aside. They were like, can you try and do that next year? So this year I have. I've been, every invoice I get in, I put 40% of it aside, 20 for VAT, 20 for corporation tax. And I won't need to spend all of that on VAT or corporation tax, but it's a way. And so that's something I learned the hard way. So, made all the mistakes. But this is something I think that people often forget as well. When you run your own business, the only thing I have any experience of is the thing that I'm selling. So like when it was HR consultancy, when it's coaching, when it's training and development, whatever it is, that's how I know. That's what I know how to do. I've never been an accountant. I've never been a salesman. I've never done marketing. I don't know the first thing about branding, PR, or technology. Not a clue. And then suddenly you've got to do all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're fortunate enough to have, there are a lot of people that go out on their own after they've been made redundant. They've got a massive redundancy package. You can spend some money on a website. You can spend some money on an accountant. I made a few mistakes in terms of what I spent on initially. There's an awful lot of people out there, and you just don't know who's good and who's not, and what do I really need and what can wait. And so that is a minefield to navigate in terms of where should I be spending money to get things set up? How is this going to run the best way for me? Like I pay an accountant a fair amount every month. That's a non-negotiable. Like I ain't going to do it. So I have a really good accountant now who is like, don't forget you need to do this and you need to send me the receipts for this. And I basically need a school teacher level of accountant to force me to do things.
Well, it sounds like an accountability partner wrapped up as an accountant, like sometimes we need that.
We do. It doesn't come naturally to everyone.
No, and I think you've spoken the truth there once again, insofar as you can build, you can buy, you can borrow, you never go into product management terminology, but there's some things we don't want to build, like it's not, so delegate where you need to, and then the rest, you can get good if you practice it, but do you really want to, is the question.
And should that be where you're spending your time? That's probably the question I ask myself the most. Is this a good use of my time, or should I be asking someone else to do it?
Yeah, I need to lean into that delegation space a bit more, because at the moment, I definitely feel like you do. It's like, but I feel like a kid in the candy shop. I'm like, oh my God, there's all these jobs that I never had to do, but I love it. Like I love getting involved in a bit of tech and this and that. But yeah, with you, I'm with you 100% on the finance bit. I do have to have an accountability accountant help me with that. I'm just like, I think we just get you just get conditioned by knowing that every month your salary will cover everything, and then you've got a bit of fun money, which turns out to be more fun money than you need to spend, and then you land here in this place where I love it, £10,000 to £100. I've actually spoken to my landlord and told him that I can pay you in goodwill. How about this? How about that? He's not accepting my calls anymore, but that goes. that goes.
It really can be feast and famine. It's just there's no real certainty depending on what you do. Like I say, there's a lot of fractional HRDs that are on retainers with their clients, and they know this is a 1-year contract. I'm getting $3,000 a month. I know I'm getting $3,000 a month for that. I don't have anything really like that at all. So.
Well, I think what I hear a bit of here is that there's adversity and then there's adventure within that adversity, because
that's a nice way of putting it.
Isn't it marvelous? Like we were never reincarnated, so how are we gonna know? And actually you could be woe is me, and my God, I've got to do it, and HMRC, oh my God, when I get those letters I'm like, but they have a job to do, and unless sometimes we feel that pain or that learning, then we don't change. But now and now you've got a payment plan, so there is adventure through that adversity.
I love that, adventure through adversity. That's a good one. Yeah, you should trademark that.
Get to them, because if you do and I get a bill for £1,000, I'm not paying it. Oh, brilliant. We're making some amazing process. And I think you've helped me with so many things just organically. One of the things that I thought you would be well positioned to really talk about as well, given the coaching hat too, is that
Mm.
you work with leaders, across HR and being one yourself. When it comes to some of the key learnings or lessons from leadership, what are some that kind of come to the top of your mind that you might share for anyone listening, thinking, "Oh, what nuggets has Kirsty heard along the way?"
The best leaders I've ever worked with are the ones that communicate effectively, and the worst are the ones that don't. And I think that communication or lack thereof has been responsible for about 90% of the HR issues I've ever dealt with.
Mm.
And yet we overlook it constantly.
Hmm.
I think I've had more, in terms of people I've reported to or CEOs of businesses that I've worked in, there have been more ineffective than effective ones. And it was nearly always down to their communication style or lack of communication.
Mm. That's so important. That's
Mm.
so important. It's say it as it is, or say it nuance with the person that you're speaking to. Like, what would your guidance be?
I think it depends on the situation.
Yeah, okay.
Honesty is always preferable, but sometimes you have to sort of withhold certain bits. Like you can't
Yeah.
always tell everybody everything,
No.
but you can tell them that you can't tell them everything,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like there are certain things here that I cannot disclose to you for confidentiality reasons, but I'm going to tell you what I can is an awful lot better than saying nothing.
Yeah.
I've always
Trust.
adopted that approach anyway. Just be as
Yeah.
honest as you're able to be.
Yeah.
Don't be
Trust.
dishonest, but just leave out the bits that you can't talk about.
Yeah. No, I respect that. Trust builds, transparency builds when you speak the truth. And
Mm,
but do you know, like we know, like deep down, like you've been there and you speak to somebody and there's something they're not sharing,
hmm.
like you will pick up on it and it just makes you go a bit like, "Ooh." And if that
Yep,
ick radar gets high enough, then you know that's not your person. So you've got
exactly.
to be careful with that.
Exactly.
Amazing. And as I love this, we've flown nicely through this conversation. There is the future of evolving HR that I really wanted to tap into, because so far for me, as you've described it, it has become, well, it's become like a family of a community, and that it's evolved, as the name suggests, organically. Is
Mm.
there space for some strategic thinking around where it grows to next, that may already be in your mind but not in the public's mind, that you can share? Because I'd love to know what, if you have any thoughts as to where it's going next, really.
I would really like for it to be I would like it to be a go-to resource for HR professionals. I want
Mm,
the name, I would love for people to use it instead of LinkedIn, for people to use it instead of the CIPD, dare I say, to use it instead of some other HR communities. I would love for it to just be recognized by people and so that they know. And I've always had these three pillars of support, development, community. That's what I
mm,
want to continue to focus on. So just, I guess, like having an HR colleague in your back pocket that isn't actually in your organization. I think my goal is to reach as many people as possible with that.
that's powerful. That is really powerful. And actually, it really, in a way, answers the question that I had around the legacy that you would like to leave with it, because I think you've captured that. But is there any more to build on that in terms of when all is said and done?
I think I would just like to be known for supporting other people in their HR career, just in whatever form that takes, just
Mm,
being someone that others could rely on or look up to or get some useful learning from. That's
mm,
that's what I love to do. There are some brilliant people out there working in the HR profession and brilliant people coming into it all the time. And they're just so often held back by outdated views around what HR does. And they don't always have the words to articulate it very well themselves because there's so much that we're not taught about what life in HR actually involves.
yeah,
Um, I just would like to be able to provide, to fill in some of those gaps for people, basically.
yeah. No, to be fair, you're already well on the way, and I say this from the reintroduction of our relationship and seeing the cozy one back in July, and you know, the love and the real, I think, respect for the way that you show up for the community, that for ages it's almost been like dehumanized in a way. It's not, you're not a person. Oh, HR's coming, you know, and it's just taking away from the uniqueness that we all bring, because we are, like I said about you, you're a daughter, you're a sister, you're a confidant to many, you are more things than your title ever allowed you to be. So you're doing it, and that community you've got is my new home. These folks are my jam in terms of that. So
I love that. I love
no,
that. I remember on the evening I was sitting there watching you were chatting away to people who I know from completely different, you know, Sinead, you were talking to Sinead for quite a while,
yeah,
and like she was someone who came on my Spice program about 2-3 years ago, and then she did it again this year because she wanted a refresher.
yeah,
And I was like, I've never met Sinead in person before, and then she was sitting talking to you, who I knew 20 years. It was like this really surreal moment, but it was lovely. It's just, I don't know. I think there's a vibe that people get from me and from what I do, and they'll know straight away if it's for them or not. And I know I'm not for everybody. That's absolutely fine. I'm not going to do the corporate suited and booted thing anymore. There are plenty of places where you can go and get that if that's what you want.
yeah,
That's just not me. I'm more about, I want to see the person behind the job. I want to see who
yes.
you actually are, because that's the unique thing that you bring to the job. The work is the work.
Yeah, no, you speak the truth, and I think this is again why the chiming and the magnetism and the energy work. Because when I got there, I was a bit overwhelmed with like the realness that was just concentrated in that packed space, and I
It
was like,
was very small, wasn't it? There was like 35,
yeah,
40 of us in that one small room, but yeah, that's why
yeah,
I called it cozy.
it was definitely that, and I had this desire to like know everybody's story and speak to everyone, because I was like, wow, how did you what? Like you're just you. Like I could see it and feel you. And I thought to myself, like, I know I don't want to do this thing where you go around and you have superficial chats. So I just stood still, and then Sinead came over and we just got into the conversation that you witnessed, and then Kiara came over.
Yeah.
I was standing there just thinking, wow, I'm looking at the pizza thinking I probably had enough. And then Kiara came back because she's holding a piece of pizza, and she was like, hello. And then we just got into this conversation. And then since then, I've spoken to both of them, and there's just so
I
many
love
other
that.
things in terms of collaboration that come from it. But energy does its thing. You don't need to work a room or to try and just be there and be present.
I
And
think I
you
think my
think,
favorite thing about it is it's I hate the word networking, because the image it conjures up is like standing awkwardly in a corner with a glass of wine, thinking
yeah,
when would be too early to leave without looking rude,
yes,
and forced conversations. And I think, I don't know, I seem to have this knack of bringing people together, and there's nothing forced about the conversations. It's just, I don't know. I don't know. I just it worked in Manchester. It worked at the Cozy One as well. It just, people just open up and talk, and then it's like you said, you've had follow-up calls with people. There will be potential collaborations that have come out of it. I never get that out of formalized networking events,
no, it's
but you
it's
get
my
it just from having actual conversations with real
yeah.
people.
And just to say it, for me, there with both conversations, there was no agenda. We just sat there. It was like, there's no agenda, but I just love chatting. Let's chat some more. And then
Mm,
nothing else, and nothing else. There is a support network that is now expanded, and I'm aware of what they do. They know what I do, and we're already talking about how we can help each other do things. And that for me is the thing, because I know for a fact now that I'm not going to be everyone's cup of coffee. Coffee with Kofi's spawned because of that. But if you do something, and yes, you won't be everyone's particular brand of spice, but
mm,
those that you are their jam or their flavor, it is likely that those around you will be of a similar mentality, albeit highly individual and different. And I
mm,
found like it was literally the Rainbow Nation of everybody who is authentically out there just being themselves. And I was like,
yeah,
it's just a place like no pretending, no performance, just
yeah.
people being actual people. And that is what I love. So thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
before I go, and I think I've got one last question. Apparently, I'm supposed to be in Canary Wharf shortly, but I'm
Oh,
here enjoying this conversation. I may be late, or the motorbike
okay.
of the day once again, but don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. Um, for anyone listening to this, thinking that I'd love to be more Kirsty, I'm thinking that. What would you want them to leave this conversation either thinking or feeling?
I would just want them to feel that they don't need to try to be anybody else but themselves. Because that's all I've done is stop pretending to be someone I'm not and start being myself. Because I think an awful lot, once you stop masking and you start just being yourself, yes, your group of people around you will probably change a little, but
Mhm.
honesty comes out of conversations, trust comes from honesty, openness, all of those lovely things that make relationships function really, really well. They're much easier to forge and maintain when you're being yourself. Much easier. So, yeah, it's that we need to
Yeah.
drop the masks.
Yeah, and with dropping the mask, you've dropped the mic on what has been one of my favorite conversations. And you're so right. When you're yourself, it makes it easy for you to find your tribe, but also for your tribe to find you. And the
Yeah.
energy that it takes to try to hold on to relationships or conversations that just aren't for you anymore or
Mm-hmm.
ever.
Yeah.
It can be diverted delightfully to mischief and merrymaking with your band of crazies like the Texas Four. I love it.
My band of crazies. That is the perfect description of the Texas Four.
They are,
Band of
but
crazies.
wow, so bright and passionate and real. And I think that's what, yeah, I'd like to
And do you
echo
know
that.
what? None of them used to be like that. I've got pictures of all, well, not so much Sam. I haven't got pictures of Sam in her corporate days, but I've got pictures of Kelly and Michelle in their corporate days when they were masking and they don't even look like the same people.
Nah, I don't think they'll be
With,
wearing the colors that I saw, and they I think it'll be toned down, blacks, navies, grays, maybe something like that. But
yeah, like different people,
yeah,
different people. But it's this realization that I think we all came to that, hang on a minute, why on earth am I going through life pretending to be someone I'm not? Like, what's the point in that?
uh, let's not do it. No, thank you so much, and I can't wait. Like November's too far away, so wherever you are in Spain, let me know the coordinates, GPS or
Gonna
otherwise.
turn
I will
up.
make myself there. Or if you do come back over,
Bless
I
you.
can be an accountability partner to stop you from getting ink or spending money that you shouldn't spend. So let me know, and
Thank
we'll
you,
regroup.
Kofi.
This has
Thank you for
been,
having me. This has been lovely.
yes, likewise. I wish you a wonderful rest of the afternoon, and yeah,
You too.
great to see and watch you keep doing the thing with interest and champion cheerleading skills.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you for having me.
take care. Bye.
Bye.